An amazing receptionist greeted a deaf visitor in sign language. Discover the hidden millionaire. It was just another morning at the bustling little law firm, the kind of place where hopes sometimes flickered like candle flames in the wind. Sarah, the receptionist, brightened the gray office with her willingness to help and a smile wide enough to disarm even the most anxious clients. But that day was different. The moment James walked in, a softly spoken, tentative man with eyes reflecting a lifetime of challenges, Sarah felt the air shift. She sensed an untold story behind his shy demeanor, and with her sign language skills, she greeted him warmly. "Hello. How can I help you?" As they began to communicate, it became clear that James wasn't just battling legal issues, he carried a weight of prejudice. He described how people's dismissive attitudes made him feel invisible and how he persevered despite the scoffing glances. Each sign he made unfolded layers of anguish, igniting a fire of empathy within Sarah. Yet, with each share, she felt the tightening grip of her own family's doubts and expectations, which often loomed larger than her dreams. "Can I see you in my office?" Sarah gestured, leading him to a quiet space. As they sat across from each other, her racing mind swirled with the implications of her career ambitions clashing with family loyalty. Could she risk their judgment? There was an undeniable pull toward James, drowning in his vulnerability but shining a glimmer of determination. Every flicker of hope he expressed about his dreams felt like a mirror reflecting her own aspirations. Before Sarah could suggest a possible solution for his legal troubles, James revealed the unexpected: he was a millionaire. His request was not merely a transaction but an opportunity to reshape lives. The thought staggered her. Here was someone willing to invest in the world through compassion, yet daily faced rejection. Sarah's heart conflicted with excitement and despair. Would her colleagues see him as just another rich man? Immediately, an uncomfortable chill swept through her, reflecting the office buzz tainted with skepticism. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. With the buzz of her colleagues bleeding into their conversation, Sarah felt the pressures of their expectations creeping around her. She already faced backlash for her connection to a deaf client, and now this revelation raised the stakes exponentially. Her mind reeled as she pictured her family, their faces etched with doubt and disbelief. Could she really choose this path, a path rife with judgment? She wanted to champion James, wanting the world to see the potential she saw, yet the looming specter of doubt gnawed at her like a relentless tide. The anxious atmosphere crackled in the air as Sarah faced a potential betrayal. Her trusted colleague, already blurring the boundaries, considered James as mere statistics rather than a person of value. Would she stand up for what she believed in, risking professional relationships and family approval? Her thoughts beat louder, drowning out the hopeful plans they had begun to share. The weight of those decisions felt like 1,000 anchors, pulling her under just as she tried to surface for air. James's earnest plea for partnership lingered, and she knew this was just the beginning. Would she risk everything for a cause some saw fit to belittle? The answers hung heavy, unseen, as uncertainty loomed larger than ever. The morning light barely penetrated Sarah's resolve as she sat at her desk, her fingers nimble yet frozen in a moment of indecision. The office hummed around her, the air thick with the murmurs of colleagues discussing clients and prospects. Each word echoed the experiences she had, weaving a fabric of anxiety over her thoughts. James's vulnerability had unveiled a mirror of her own aspirations, but now she felt trapped between two worlds: the firm, with its restrictive views, and the open possibilities that James had introduced. Taking a deep breath, Sarah resumed her tasks, but her mind was adrift. Every keystroke felt heavy with the significance of her choice. She had always been the supportive daughter, the reliable employee, but something deep within her, a vibrant thread of ambition, pressed against the confines of her current life. James had ignited something in her, a flicker of courage that danced dangerously close to the surface. She envisioned advocating for those often brushed aside, for people like James who dared to shine through adversity. Confronting her established pattern was daunting. As the day wore on, Sarah found her thoughts spiraling toward a crossroads. She could see paths unfurling before her, one leading to a safe existence filled with predictable outcomes, family praise, co-workers' approval but stifling monotony, the other glittering with the promise of risk and impact, albeit shadowed by potential rejection. During lunch, Sarah's colleagues dissected the morning meeting, recalling the type of clients they preferred, those who fit neatly within societal norms. Her heart sank as she listened. "I can't believe that guy just walks in here thinking he can demand our attention," one of them scoffed, eliciting chuckles. The ripple of derision made her stomach clench, stirring the realization deep within a painful recognition of what losing oneself could feel like, a fear she needed to combat. After finishing her meal, she approached a window, the sunlight spilling in like hope. In that moment, she was struck by a profound sense of purpose. If she didn't advocate for those overlooked, who would? What if she could help James secure a legal foundation not just for his business but for a social enterprise he envisioned? Courage surged, warming her spine. Underneath it all, there lingered whispers of doubt that threatened to drown her resolve. Yet, the more she thought about James's story and unyielding battle against societal prejudice, a sense of solidarity began to form. It made her realize that the discomfort of speaking up and standing out paled in comparison to the potential of inspiring change. That afternoon, Sarah reached for her phone, fingers hovering over James's number. The lines between personal commitment and professional responsibility blurred as she questioned her intention. Would her colleagues dismiss her if she took this stand? Did she truly believe in the potential to transform not only James's life but her own and the perspectives of those around her? But just as she hit call, a shadow loomed at her doorway. Brad, her supervisor, a man who had always prided himself on his ability to gauge every thought. With a knowing smile, he leaned casually against the doorframe, his piercing eyes meeting hers. "I hear you've been involved with the new client. How's that going?" he asked. His tone dripped with condescension, as if the mere thought of James's worth was absurd, a confrontation she hadn't anticipated. The moment of truth hung in the air, like the stillness before a storm, leaving Sarah with the awareness that she needed to defend her belief. Now, standing at the precipice, she had a choice to make. Would she rise to the occasion, or would she allow doubt to pull her back into conformity? The stakes had never felt higher, and the path before her and behind her now shimmered ominously. Sarah's heart raced as the moment hung suspended, pregnant with the potential for both liberation and defeat. The weight of Brad's gaze pressed in, an almost tangible force against Sarah's already frayed reservations. She could sense the anticipation building within him, feeding on her hesitation. A wave of indignation washed over her. How dare he dismiss someone's worth based solely on societal expectations? This wasn't just a moment of confrontation, it was the incubator for her liberation or entrapment. "Things are going well," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "James has some exciting ideas." Brad raised an eyebrow, a smirk cutting through his composed demeanor. "Exciting ideas. Right. Just make sure you're not wasting too much time on frivolous concepts. We thrive on results here, Sarah." The implied judgment hung in the air. She felt like a marionette, strings taut, controlling her every movement with the weight of his expectations. "I believe in his vision." She surprised herself with the defiance in her tone. Each word extracted a stake from the foundation of conformity she'd built. "Be careful. We both know how quickly things can spiral out of control in this field." He shifted slightly, analyzing her reaction with a predatory precision. "Not everyone can be saved, you know." In that instant, Sarah realized she wasn't just defending James, she was grappling with her own fears of failure and inadequacy. There was a deep-seated part of her that had always feared the risks of stepping beyond mediocrity. But hadn't she already tasted the bitter flavor of stagnation? Sarah's pulse quickened as her mind raced. "I'm not here to save anyone," she countered, breathing deeply to harness her burgeoning determination. "I simply want to facilitate change where it's needed." In saying this, she almost believed it. Brad leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Just remember who signs your paychecks. The insinuation chilled her as he sauntered away, leaving a lingering chill that clung to her skin. She stood by the window once more, feeling the sun seep into her bones, illuminating parts of her she'd kept hidden. The thought flared bright: if she continued to allow others' opinions to shape her actions, she'd concede her own narrative. Empowerment surged within her, shimmering like the sunlight dancing on the glass. Sarah's resolve hardened. James's upcoming meeting was a crucial opportunity to position his vision within a framework that could potentially secure not only his business but redefine her professional aspirations. She needed to gather her thoughts, weave a strategy, one that would resist the looming disapproval around her. That evening, as she began outlining potential proposals, the rhythm of her thoughts transformed into a fervent articulation of possibilities. Each bullet point shone with potential, imbued with her passion and newfound courage. She could present it to the firm, showcasing the qualitative differences in client humanization over profitability metrics, but doubt wormed its way back into her thoughts. What if presenting this idea met with ridicule? What if she lost her job because of it? Right when the fear threatened to overwhelm her, she recalled the defiance in her own voice against Brad. She opened her phone, the screen glowing with James's contact name, the image of his supportive smile flooding her senses. Suddenly, reaching for her internal strength felt like a viable choice rather than a distant hope. She hit call this time, determination igniting in her chest. As the phone rang, Sarah felt the fierceness of countless trajectories colliding: her fear of judgment, her desire for impact, and the burgeoning woman she could become if she embraced this newfound purpose. When James answered, she spoke without hesitation, her voice infused with the confidence of a path chosen. This is only the beginning, she thought, exhilaration rushing through her like a shot of adrenaline. But even as she made plans, shadows of doubt lingered. Would her colleagues' scorn and Brad's skepticism drag her back? The moment felt precarious. She needed support, both from James and in shaping her office environment. It was then that she realized, she wasn't just fighting for James anymore, she was fighting for her own narrative, her own dreams. As she hung up with a feeling of empowerment coursing through her, the door to her office creaked open. In walked a familiar face, another colleague, eyes gleaming with curiosity. "What's all this excitement about?" he inquired innocently. A new battle was just beginning, one that would challenge her resolve and give rise to inner clarity. The stakes had been raised. Now, she had to consider the direction of her concurrent fight: acceptance, vision, and loyalty against conformity and fear. What path would she choose to navigate next? Sarah took a deep breath, her pulse racing at the unexpected interruption. The familiar face of Alex, a well-respected colleague, stood framed in her office doorway, curiosity radiating from him. She wondered if he sensed the storm brewing within her, the clashing emotions of hope and fear. "Just brainstorming some ideas for an upcoming project," she replied, trying to mask the tension in her tone. The words felt clumsy, yet part of her wanted to share the excitement brimming just beneath her surface. "Sounds intriguing. You know, I've been meaning to ask about the project you're doing with James," Alex replied, stepping inside. He had a way of engaging her that made her feel heard, and she appreciated it. That moment, the urge to confide in him surged forward. "I think it could be a game changer. We're focusing on qualitative outcomes, on really connecting with clients." Her voice was steadier as she spoke, the words gaining strength and clarity. "That's ambitious, especially here," Alex cautioned, though his expression remained supportive. "But if you believe in it, you should definitely pursue it. You know, our corporate culture tends to lean towards numbers and cold statistics over human stories." "I'm aware," she said, meeting his gaze with renewed confidence. "But what if we could shift the narrative? What if those connections could lead to better overall results? A network of trust and loyalty instead of just transactions." His expression turned contemplative, and Sarah could see him weighing her words carefully. "That's an excellent point," he replied, a trace of admiration in his voice. But are you prepared for the backlash? Brad 1T take kindly to this shift in focus. The name sent a surge of apprehension through her. Brad's presence loomed large in her mind, reminding her of their earlier confrontation. But it also reignited her determination. She was fighting for change, not just for herself but for her own vision of what professionalism could mean. "I'll take that risk," she affirmed, a fire igniting within her. "I refuse to remain in a rut just because it's what's expected. I want to create something meaningful." She felt her resolve cemented with each word spoken. "You're braver than most," Alex remarked, leaning back in thought. "And that could very well set you apart. It might also put you under scrutiny from more than just Brad. You could stir the pot." He paused, weighing how much to reveal. "Just know, if you need backing, I'm with you." Sarah felt a warmth of gratitude. Support in this environment was a rarity. It was the first time she realized just how powerful collaboration could be if she harnessed it wisely. "Thank you, Alex. I might take you up on that." Their conversation shifted to practical strategies, her vision shaping into tangible steps. She detailed her ideas, feeling each point strengthen her purpose as she laid them out clearly. The excitement in her voice flowed, allowing her to channel the doubts into constructive plans. Just as she was starting to feel buoyed by her ambitions, her phone buzzed again, breaking through the moment. It was a message from James. "Ready for the meeting tomorrow? Let us brainstorm one more time before we present." "Sarah, what's that?" Alex asked, glancing at her screen. Only then did it hit her. The accountability she felt to James was mirrored by the responsibility she was cultivating in her office. This project wasn't only about him, it was an opportunity for her to step into her own light. "I'm ready," she said with a new confidence. "I'm going to make this work." With renewed determination, Sarah waved goodbye to Alex and returned to her notes, refining her strategies. The connection she forged with Alex helped dismantle a brick in the wall of fear Brad had erected around her. As the night deepened and shadows crept in, Sarah realized the next day would be critical. This was not merely about executing a project but redefining how she stood in a landscape influenced by others' expectations. The weight of the upcoming meeting rested heavily on her shoulders. Was she truly prepared to assert her vision against skepticism? Before falling asleep, she felt an unsettling combination of excitement and dread twist in her gut. Tomorrow would unveil not just the fate of James's proposal but also Sarah's unsteady path toward becoming the professional she aspired to be, one bold step away from respectability. Would she capture the momentum, or would the fear of judgment bring her crashing to the ground? As sleep finally enveloped her, the question lingered, pregnant with possibility. As dawn broke, Sarah's heartbeat echoed against the walls of her mind, each thump a reminder of the appointment awaiting her. The meeting with James and the presentation for senior management felt like an impending storm, one that could either shower her with success or drown her in self-doubt. In her usual rush, she moved through her morning routine mechanically. Coffee brewed, but the aroma barely penetrated the haze of her thoughts. The lingering doubts from last night threatened to resurface. Had she truly prepared enough? Was she articulate enough to convey the depth of her vision? What if Brad challenged her every word? These questions flitted through her mind like shadows, but she fought to push them aside. Today was about action, a chance to manifest the momentum she had built. She steered herself toward her workspace, focusing on the notes she had meticulously crafted, each idea articulating a fresh perspective on building genuine client relationships. When she entered the conference room that morning, her confidence wavered. The room was ominously arrayed with senior executives seated around a polished oak table, their expressions unreadable. Among them, Brad's gaze was piercing, and Sarah could feel the weight of his skepticism before he even spoke. "Let us hear what you and James have in store for us," he said, gesturing with an air of nonchalance that concealed his contempt. At that moment, Sarah reminded herself to stand steadfast, not just for her project but for the shift she believed was necessary. She shared their concepts, her voice steady yet crisp, detailing her vision of qualitative outcomes and emotional engagement. Her nerves melted into excitement as she spoke. Each statistic was woven with a narrative, each slide became a platform for her ideas. With Alex's words echoing in her mind, she held her ground against the numerical biases of the room. At first, the executives listened in silence, but it was Brad who interjected first. "Sarah, while I appreciate the creativity, doesn't this approach risk diluting our core metrics? Emotion doesn't pay the bills?" His tone was sharp, and the room grew tense. Instead of faltering, Sarah seized the moment. "On the contrary, Brad. Empathy builds trust, and trust is what leads to lasting partnerships. The bottom line isn't just about numbers, it's also about relationships that can yield greater returns in the long term." The passion in her voice drew the attention of some heads around the table, even causing a faint nod from one of the other directors. "Interesting perspective," another executive chimed in, his brow furrowed in thought. "But can you quantify this shift? Do we have data-driven examples?" The challenge was clear, he was putting her on the defensive. But nestled, shifting beneath the surface, confidence began to unfold. Based on her research, she recalled a recent case study where a shift to personal engagement had resulted in a 20% increase in client retention. "Actually, I can," she stated, her breathing steadying as she shared evidence that supported her approach. The room shifted, the executives leaned forward, the air thick with curiosity rather than doubt. Each piece of data she presented seemed to rewrite the initial response she perceived from Brad into something that could procure change. As she concluded her presentation, Sarah stood taller, feeling as if she was finally carving her place in this room filled with hardened perspectives. Her voice didn't tremble, it resonated with a newly found clarity, a recalibration of who she was in comparison to who she wanted to be. The room buzzed as discussions swirled around her, heads turning toward Brad for his input. The nervous energy that had draped over her evaporated, leaving behind an exhilarating sense of accomplishment, a foretaste of the acceptance she longed for. Before anyone could voice their conclusions, she interjected, "I would love to hear your thoughts on integrating this strategy into our overall goals." The boldness of her question caught everyone off guard. Would they reject her entirely, or might she have sparked a conversation they hadn't anticipated? As the momentum shifted in her favor, Sarah felt a flame igniting within her, illuminating the path she needed to take. Whatever the outcome of this meeting, she had finally taken control, ready to confront the challenges ahead. But as the deliberations continued, she sensed unease rippling from Brad, a storm on the horizon. Would he retaliate against her newfound confidence? The stakes were rising, and she understood that the true battle had only just begun. As the meeting buzzed with chatter, Sarah's heart raced, igniting a mixture of exhilaration and dread. Though she had held her ground during the presentation, the aftermath bore the weight of uncertainty. Voices echoed, ideas collided, and Brad's simmering discontent loomed like a shadow, threatening to eclipse her hard-earned moment of triumph. "Creative idea, but can it be implemented without disrupting our current workflow?" One of the quieter executives chimed in, prompting Sarah to level her gaze around the table, gauging the room's mood. She sensed curiosity, a flicker of interest that she had yearned to elicit. Drawing a breath, she leaned forward, maintaining her composure. "Implementation is indeed crucial. We can initiate a pilot program, test its impact on a smaller scale. This allows us to refine the process without risking our existing operations." As she spoke, her thoughts crystallized. Ahead lay a strategy that could transform not just client relations but her own professional trajectory. Nods exchanged among certain executives buoyed her spirits, rekindling her hope. Yet, one thought shadowed her still: Brad. She was acutely aware of his presence, his disapproval palpable as if he cast a spell of doubt over every word she uttered. Then, as if summoned by her unspoken fears, he interjected. "And what if this initiative does not yield the projected results? How do we mitigate losses?" His words cut through the burgeoning optimism, turning the energy in the room. Eyes shifted to Sarah, scanning for signs of her momentum faltering. Feeling the weight of every gaze, she harnessed her newfound strength. This was not just about defending her plan but about reinforcing her identity. Every new strategy carries risk. However, the risk of stagnation, of allowing our competition to overshadow us due to fear, is far greater. We owe it to our teams and clients to evolve. Her voice, though steady, bore the timbre of urgency. She could almost feel the air shift as some directors cautiously leaned toward her argument. Brad wasn't finished, though. His challenge was relentless, a bid to tighten his grip on the room's direction. But are we truly prepared to take a gamble with our reputation on the line? A deep breath transformed her anxiety into assertiveness. It was a question she had anticipated, a cornerstone of the fierce internal debate she had wrestled with. To innovate is to take risks, Brad. But the greater gamble lies in remaining complacent. I think we can all agree our industry is evolving, and it is in our best interest to lead that evolution rather than react to it. Realizing the shift, how her passion swayed them, she held on to that spark of hope. But beneath it all, familiar dread coiled tightly. What if he retaliated in a way she hadn't predicted? The conversation twisted and turned, momentum flowing from Brad to some of the more supportive executives, and back again. Sarah remained alert, absorbing every word, every critique, ready to adapt her responses in real time. This was not just a presentation, it was a test of her fortitude. After an eternity, the discussions began to taper. Options for schedules, timelines, and responsibilities were floated. Then, an unexpected voice broke through the din. Claire, one of the higher-ranking executives, finally spoke. Let us get this on the agenda for our next meeting. I believe there is potential here that deserves deeper exploration. Relief washed over Sarah, hope and gratitude intertwining beneath the surface. Yet, pride began to curdle into apprehension as she caught Brad's probing stare. She could feel the stage had shifted, but so too had the lines drawn in the sand. After the meeting ended, Sarah made her way to her office, heart still racing with triumph and fear in equal measure. She knew today had been a turning point, a delicate balance struck between defiance and ambition. But with victory came vulnerability. Brad would not let this slide easily. Reaching her office door, she paused, tension knotting in her stomach. Could she truly navigate the fallout from Brad's reaction? And even more pressing, could she withstand the repercussions of advocating for change in a dominion fortified by his resolve? A sense of determination surged inside her, yet the uncertainty remained. What would Brad do next? As she sat down in her office, eyes scanning the horizon beyond the glass, she felt a question crystallize within. How far was she willing to go to defend her vision? The resolve to find out settled like a spark within her, igniting the path forward. But as she stared out into the gray morning, she wondered, what if the battle ahead would force her to confront more than just a colleague? What if it would demand a reckoning with herself? Sarah closed her office door, grounding herself in the privacy of her space. The walls seemed to thrum with the tension left over from the meeting, a physical reminder of the challenges she had just faced. Yet, despite the uncertainty gnawing at her, clarity burgeoned. She was poised at the edge of a significant personal and professional transformation. Over the past few weeks, Sarah had experienced a shift within, a growing sense of confidence that had begun to replace her earlier hesitations. But today had elevated that she had not only stepped into her power, but she had also engaged directly with one of her staunchest adversaries. Every word she had spoken was a brick laid in the path toward her ambitions, yet with Brad looming in the background, the path felt perilous. Her desk cluttered with project documents and client folders mirrored her internal chaos. She needed to strategize. Today's engagement had revealed more than just a struggle against Brad. It was an awakening, a reminder of the latent leadership qualities she had underestimated. The idea of leading a pilot program ignited a passion she had buried beneath years of playing it safe. As she sorted through her papers, an idea sparked. She could leverage this transitional moment to bolster her influence within the company. She decided to schedule informal one-on-one meetings with some of the executives who had shown interest in her proposal. They had offered flickers of support. Now she had to stoke that fire into a burning coalition. Pulling out her calendar, she began mapping potential meetings, needing explicit details to deepen her relationships with key players. Her intention was no longer just to defend her proposal but also to forge herself a role as a strategic leader within the organization. The phone ringing startled her from her focus, but as she answered, it was an unexpected voice. Claire, the executive who had advocated for the agenda in the meeting, requesting a quick check-in. Sarah, I wanted to follow up on our discussion today. Your idea caught my attention, and I think there is something valuable worth exploring here, Claire said, her tone encouraging. Thank you, Claire. I appreciate your support. I'd love to discuss how we can potentially align further on this initiative, Sarah replied, her voice steady, realizing she was no longer just responding, she was engaging in dialogue that could shape the outcome. Their conversation evolved into a brainstorming session, each idea exchanged reinforcing Sarah's belief in her vision. Claire's insights were refreshing, she provided a depth of experience that connected with Sarah's ambition. After the call, Sarah felt emboldened. She was starting to see how collaboration could be her ally and how advocacy could shift the company's direction alongside her. As days passed, Sarah found herself balancing the exhilaration of budding alliances against the ever-looming threat of Brad's potential reaction. Each conversation with her growing network built her confidence further, but with it came the realization that she would need to be cautious. Was she ready to confront Brad directly? In the midst of her pivot towards collaboration, she sensed a new challenge emerging within herself. Fear began to resurface. She found herself questioning if pushing too hard could alienate her peers or trigger a massive pushback from Brad. Suddenly, she was at a crossroads. Should she proceed with her current momentum at the risk of confronting Brad decisively, or should she tread lightly, preserving her relationships while still pursuing her goals? As she mulled over these uncertainties, a deeper understanding settled within her. The stakes were higher than ever. For the first time, Sarah realized that facing Brad wouldn't just be about her career, it demanded a confrontation of the vulnerabilities she had concealed for too long. What she uncovered in her reflections emerged not just as a professional conflict but a personal exploration of strength she had yet to fully embrace. Could she transform the inevitable facing off with Brad into an opportunity for greater growth? The clock ticked forward, and as the sun dipped lower in the sky, Sarah resolved that the time had come to face not just Brad, but the pieces of herself she had long overlooked. The confrontation loomed nearer, but so too did the promise of profound transformation. Now she merely wondered, would the fallout guide her to embrace the leader she was destined to become, or would it reveal fears that were still painfully tethered to her past? Sarah sat at her desk, the late afternoon light spilling through the blinds in sharp, angular patterns across the clutter. The remnants of her earlier conversation with Claire lingered in her mind like a precious fragment of clarity amidst the chaos. Bolstered by her new allies, she felt a swell of purpose that eclipsed the anxiety brewing at the thought of Brad's impending response. But empowerment came with a weighty price. How far was she willing to push her abilities to seek change? The cacophony of thoughts dulled her focus. She needed to refine her approach. She could envision a conversation with Brad that wouldn't just defend her proposal, it could challenge the status quo, rather than simply seeking approval. Yet, the thought of confronting not just him but the fears he embodied felt like a dizzying leap into the void. Determined not to let the dread overpower her, Sarah picked up a notebook, dedicated to fleshing out her strategy. Each page became a canvas for asserting her authority, and soon, she found herself sketching a framework for the pilot program, a step-by-step plan that showcased her leadership and vision. As she progressed through those sketches, an unbidden thought crept into her mind. It loomed large, silencing the technicalities of her plans. What if her ideas fell flat? What if her colleagues laughed? Would they merely echo Brad's dismissive tones, reinforcing her hidden insecurities, the very doubts she was trying to dismantle? The sound of her phone vibrating on the desk pulled her from the spiral of self-doubt. It was a notification, a brief message from Claire confirming a lunch meeting for the next day. Sarah's heart raced. This wasn't just another meeting, it was an opportunity to solidify the backing of someone who had already proven her influence. The prospect excited her. That night, as she scrolled through various industry articles and success stories of leaders who had carved their own paths, she stumbled upon a quote that resonated deeply: "Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." This wasn't merely an inspirational tidbit, it felt like an affirmation. She was paralyzed by fear, true, but that didn't mean she had to let it control her. with renewed vigor, Sarah devoted the rest of her evening to honing her presentation, transforming her anxiety into an articulation of vision that was dynamic and engaging. She began to visualize the pilot program not merely as a project, but as a legacy of what she could inspire. By the time she nestled in for the night, she felt a sense of purpose enveloping her, a new alignment of her professional intentions with her deep-seated personal ambitions. The next day, in the lunch meeting with Claire, Sarah unleashed her refined vision. The clattering forks and soft murmurs around them felt oddly comforting, as if the universe itself conspired in her favor. Claire listened intently, occasionally nodding, and offering insights that sharpened Sarah's focus further. In that space, fueled by camaraderie, Sarah found herself contextualizing her ambitions, affirming that she was ready for the challenges that lay ahead. However, the moment of elation was punctured by the thought of Brad lurking in the background. How would he react if she successfully rallying support? Would it provoke him, triggering an outcome that could endanger everything she was striving for? That very realization struck Sarah with the clarity of cold water in her face. She had to confront Brad decisively. The tangled web of their rivalry could either deepen or disintegrate through her choice to step into her power. With each passing hour, the deadline for her confrontation approached like a storm cloud gathering at the horizon. Would she be able to approach it head-on, or would she flinch? More importantly, what would that choice reveal about her? As Sarah continued to analyze her intentions, the inevitable question hung heavily in the air: how would she transform this confrontation into a defining moment of leadership, rather than a cycle of conflict? The clock was ticking down. And as the day softened into dusk, a question reverberated louder than ever in her mind: was she prepared to fight not just for her proposal, but for the person she was becoming? As Sarah stood outside Brad's office, her heart raced with a rhythm that echoed the anxious flutter of her stomach. The stark contrast to her earlier lunch meeting with Claire now engulfed her in a charged silence. Would she radiate confidence, or would the weight of uncertainty settle back on her shoulders like an old coat? Taking a deep breath, she recalled the words that had bolstered her resolve: courage isn't the absence of fear but the triumph over it. It was time for a performance that would not merely be about her. It would encompass her vision and the future she wished to chart for their team. She knocked gently, and just as the tap reverberated through the quiet, Brad's brusque voice emerged, bidding her to enter. The office's familiar clutter greeted her, a territory she had long navigated, but today felt different. Today, this space was ripe for transformation, not just of her project, but of her standing within the team. "Sarah," he said, leaning back in his chair with that infuriating nonchalance that always tugged at her composure. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Thank you for meeting with me," she began, the words slipping from her mouth with a potency that neither she nor Brad expected. She felt an unfamiliar steadiness underpinning her delivery. "I'm here to discuss the pilot program proposal, and more importantly, to delve into its potential impact on the team and our goals." Brad's eyes darted over the papers before him, guarded skepticism carved into his features. "I don't see how this is a good use of our resources, Sarah. We have projects that are already hitting our targets." Her heart thumped louder at his dismissive tone, but instead of caving into the familiar spiral of doubt, a surge of determination rose within her. "I understand your concerns, Brad, but if we don't innovate, we risk stagnation. This pilot represents not just a project, but an opportunity to leverage our strengths and address the gaps in our current strategy." Silence stretched between them, sharpening her resolve. She was ready to challenge the very foundation of his opposition. "Let us consider the potential outcomes. By implementing this pilot, we would not only optimize our resources but also position ourselves as leaders in our sector." Brad's brow furrowed, skepticism giving way to contemplation. "You're being ambitious, but ambition without grounding can lead to missteps. What makes you think you can bring the team together?" Sarah leaned in, her voice low and urgent, "Because I believe in the power of collaboration. This can't just be my project, it requires everyone's input to succeed. I've already spoken with Claire, and she's on board. Her support can bring others along too." The mention of Claire seemed to resonate, a flicker of recognition crossing Brad's face. For the first time, he shifted slightly in his chair, a subtle crack in his dismissive armor. Claire's involvement might lend some weight, but can you guarantee that others will follow? The tension thrummed around them. The stakes felt impossibly high beyond the proposal. Sarah was fighting to reclaim her space, to affirm her place among her peers, and to counter the oppressive tones that whispered of her incompetence. I can't guarantee that everyone will jump on board immediately, she admitted, but change takes time. The key is starting that conversation and sparking interest. His expression softened ever so slightly. You're weaving a compelling argument, Sarah, but I need solid data to back this up. Without facts, it's all just ideas floating in the air. Panic flickered, but Sarah seized the moment. I can gather data, construct case studies, and present tangible outcomes. I'm willing to invest time and resources to make this a reality. As the air crackled with tension, Sarah realized this was more than just fighting for her proposal. It was about asserting her identity and demands in the landscape she navigated each day. With Brad's demeanor shifting, she sensed the possibility of forging a collaborative spirit rather than a destructive rivalry. As she engaged with him, another profound realization dawned: she was no longer simply a passive participant in this narrative. Let us strive for improvement. If I can show you the potential, will you reconsider? Perhaps, he replied, a hint of challenge in his tone, but in this challenge, she sensed opportunity. Sarah stood upright, feeling the grounded nature of the unfiltered potential within her. The confrontation had taken shape, and with it, her emergence into a leader. As she exited Brad's office, the necessity of collecting irrefutable evidence dawned on her. However, the victory was bittersweet, the real battle was just beginning. As she gathered her thoughts and resolved to collect data, a more pressing question emerged: what would happen when she presented not only the idea but the undeniable results that accompanied it? Would she be ready to defend her worth a second time, or would she discover what true empowerment could unleash within her? The sun streamed through the office windows, illuminating the remnants of Sarah's anxiety from the previous day's confrontation with Brad. She had walked away from that meeting not merely with a renewed sense of agency but with the realization that she was finally reclaiming her narrative. Her heart raced with the thrill of possibility. This turning point was no small achievement. Today marked a new phase in her journey. Armed with the confidence gleaned from her engagement with Brad, she unleashed her determination to gather not just data, but transformative insights that could substantiate her vision for the pilot program. Each hour spent researching was a deliberate step toward proving her competence and redefining her place within the firm. Colleagues began to notice the change, not only in her demeanor but in the way she engaged with them, confident and resolute. That evening, Sarah meticulously crafted a presentation that wove together success stories and projected metrics, establishing her proposal's viability. The clarity in her thoughts translated seamlessly into her slides. She knew that this wasn't merely about convincing Brad, it was about building a legacy of empathy and innovation that could alter the firm's approach to clients. As Sarah stood before her peers the following week, sharing her well-researched findings, she felt the room pulse with anticipation. Her colleagues leaned in, captivated by a narrative that appealed to both numbers and the human experience. She illustrated how genuine client engagement, not transaction-based relationships, could yield substantial growth. The supportive expressions on some faces reinforced her belief in the potential of collaboration. As she wrapped up her presentation, the discussions that followed were rife with engagement. Her colleagues began to share insights of their own, reaffirming a collective interest in the change she envisioned. The buzz of collaboration electrified the room, forcefully displacing the skepticism that had once loomed so heavily over her ambitions. "I'm impressed, Sarah," Claire remarked, her voice warm with encouragement. "You've really ignited a conversation about where we need to head as a team." Each supportive comment crystallized Sarah's hard-won transformation from quiet receptionist to pivotal advocate for change. Then, Brad spoke. "Your points are well taken, Sarah," he conceded, a flicker of admiration creeping into his voice. "I underestimated your ability to back your ideas with robust evidence. Let us draft a proposal for the pilot and present it to upper management." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This was the recognition she had sought, a validation not just of her proposal, but of her evolution into a capable professional. As the meeting adjourned, Sarah felt a surge of pride wash over her. The applause of her peers and the genuine support from Claire made the journey worth every moment of self-doubt she had endured. Sarah had transformed her internal landscape, navigating the complexities of doubt, conformity, and societal expectations. Days later, as she stood before executive management, presenting her fully fleshed-out plan, Sarah's confidence radiated from every word. This was her moment to shine, to demonstrate how far she had come not only as a professional but as a person who refused to be silenced. Confronting Brad had been pivotal. It had proven to herself that the person she wanted to be was already within her, waiting to emerge. With each nod from the executive board, Sarah's heart swelled. Each acknowledgement solidified her newfound resolve and competence. When the meeting concluded with a unanimous decision to adopt her pilot proposal, the weight of achievement settled comfortably on her shoulders. Sarah had not only overcome her fears but had successfully positioned herself as an integral player in her firm's future. As she left the boardroom, the hallway buzzed with whispers of admiration and congratulations. Her colleagues' respect infused a sense of belonging that had once felt out of reach. Sarah had achieved what she once thought impossible: a recognition of her worth not only as a receptionist but as a visionary capable of enacting real change. Recognizing the profound growth she had experienced, Sarah understood that this was only the beginning of an engaging journey toward even greater opportunities. She stood before the firm's glass doors, feeling the light of the setting sun wrap around her as she reflected on her transformation. It had been a struggle to rise beyond the confines of expectation. Yet here she stood, a solid figure of confidence and purpose, aware of the values she held and an unwavering determination to challenge any remnants of doubt that dared cross her path. In concluding this chapter of her life, Sarah felt ready to forge ahead into her future with the understanding that real change starts within. It wasn't just a personal triumph, it was a resolute declaration of who she was meant to be, an architect of her values and aspirations. If you have been inspired by Sarah's remarkable journey of transformation, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. We want to hear your thoughts, so comment your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Sarah's story is proof that courage can redefine our lives, and together, we can inspire countless others to embrace their true potentials.